this could be a very severe hurricane.
Hurricane Ian hits.
This one historically is going to be way over the top.
It's time to hunker down and prepare for the storm.
Reporting from Bradenton, Florida, Lester Holt.
And good day, everyone. We're coming on the air from here in Florida with breaking news as the hurricane now makes its way onshore, starting to come ashore. It's a devastating Category 4 with wind speeds topping 155 miles an hour, and it is on track to hit the U.S. The governor here warning of widespread damage, even death, especially worried about those who didn't heed evacuation orders. It's not just powerful, the winds, but also the extreme flooding, a big concern here. Storm surge forecast to reach up to 18 feet expected to swallow parts of Florida's southwest coast as it comes ashore within the next several hours. We want to go right now to Kerry Sanders in Punta Gorda, Florida now with the latest from there.
Well, Lester, what we're seeing right now are those early gusts that you get before a hurricane actually hits here. Some tropical force winds, maybe of about 40 miles per hour. Those who heard about the increasing storm surge, residents in this area who thought it was going to be 6, maybe 9, maybe 10 feet, hearing about the possibility of 16, 17 feet, have gotten very nervous. And so, like refugees, they have been driving down this road, going into a parking garage, going up inside that concrete parking garage with their cats, their dogs, getting up on the second and third floor to ride the storm out there because they don't believe that when they get this all said and done that they'll go home and find their houses dry. Their fear is that the water will be on the floor, maybe even to the ceiling. The local authorities here have told those who did not evacuate, you're on your own at this point. There's not going to be a fireman or a firewoman, and there's not going to be any police responding to you if you dial 911. So when they use the word hunkering down, that's exactly what's going on right now. People are preparing. What is a storm surge? Just very quickly, with those winds that could be 150 plus miles per hour, it blows across the surface of the water. It builds up, more water going up, and it has nowhere to go, so it goes in. And that wall of water, that storm surge, has nowhere to go but inland. And so in the red zone, that was a mandatory evacuation. In the orange zone, that was a mandatory evacuation. It now could be even beyond that, 2 miles into the final yellow zone that people are going to find there's water at their feet, maybe as high as their mattresses on their bed. Lester?
Yeah, Kerry, I just returned from a shelter near Sarasota where they're concerned that not a lot of people, they have people there, but not as many as they thought, still trying to urge people who haven't done so in those mandatory evacuation areas to move into these shelters. I want to go to Sam Brock. He is near Sarasota. What are the conditions right there right now, Sam?
Lester, look, this has been a slow crawl right now to the coast, but certainly alarm bells are up right now. And speaking about those evacuations in Sarasota County, there's about 430,000 or so people. The guidance up until today was largely for people who are in mobile homes, RVs, and low-lying areas to get out. But now we're looking, Lester, at a situation where the storm surge is projected to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 10 feet. 6 to 7 historically in this part of Southwest Florida was as high as they had ever seen before. It's a sort of piggyback on what Kerry was just saying a second ago. 12 to 18 feet. Picture the fact that a typical 2-story house is about 20 feet. So that storm surge, that wall of water that is coming in, can get all the way up near to the top of someone's roof. That is a possibility here. In Sarasota, over my shoulder, this is a downtown area that really is popular for vacations, for retirement. It's a beautiful, charming place to just get away. It is sitting on a bay, not far from where I'm standing. On the other side of the bay, all that separates it is a barrier island. On the other side of the barrier island is the Gulf, which is to say, like many parts of Southwest Florida, completely surrounded by water in so many locations. Where is all of that water going to go when it rushes in? Lester, I did have a conversation with a hospital CEO just a little while ago, because you think about the population here in Florida as the winds start to pick up here right now. All the older folks that need health care, What are their families thinking right now? There were no preemptive evacuations for Sarasota Memorial Health. But what they had to do this morning was actually evacuate folks in a behavioral health department because the building itself was too old to withstand a Category 4 or potentially 5 hurricane. Some of their buildings are brand new, but many of them are not. They're looking at potentially evacuating an ICU at some point today. But your window for doing something like that is certainly shortening right now. So there's so many angles, Lester, to think about this. But let's remember that Governor DeSantis and President Biden were talking about listening to the evacuation orders. This is why some 3 million Floridians faced evacuation orders. Hopefully many of them heeded those. But now it's too late to get out. It's getting too dangerous. Lester?
All right, Sam, thanks very much. And if you haven't seen a storm surge at work, it's really hard to appreciate how quick the water can come up, how deep it is, and how easily you can be cut off. That is why officials are so concerned here right now. Let's go to Steve Patterson right now. He is in St. Petersburg, Florida. What's the scene there?
Lester, conditions deteriorating rapidly here. The wind and the rain has significantly picked up, I would say, even in just the last 15 minutes or so. We are at St. Pete's Pier, so the bay right behind me. You can see it back there. The bay has actually pushed out. This is low tide right now as Hurricane Ian comes in. What people are worried about is when high tide rolls in, when that storm surge here builds up and spills over into the coastline. That is the primary concern that we've heard really from city officials and from county officials in Pinellas County since we've gotten here. I spoke to the mayor yesterday. He says he's been in touch with the governor's office, been in touch with the president, been in touch with residents who say they are heeding the warnings at this point. This entire area needs to be evacuated as we speak. It is no longer a situation where you can escape, where you're able to escape. You need to shelter in place. And as bad as you see me with the wind blowing almost sideways right now, I would call these hurricane force winds because I have to brace down my knees in order to stay stable. The primary concern is, again, that storm surge. It is the flash flooding, the immense flooding that is possible with the rain that is expected to settle here, with how slow this storm is expected to pass, especially over this area, even in the narrow bands that are moving up north of this area. It will settle over this area. The rain will dump on this area, and flooding is certainly possible, especially because so much of Tampa Bay is built up in low-lying areas. So the danger of flooding, the danger of millions of dollars in damage is immense. It is an ever-present threat, but right now the winds are blowing quite hard. Lester.
Sam, I wanted to ask you about the rain, because we've talked about this thing slowing down. Are you feeling a lot of rain right now, or is it coming in bands like we're seeing where I am?
It is coming in bands, Lester. I would say, every 10 or so minutes we get a good burst of wind and rain. It has not been what I would call steady at this point, but the wind has certainly. And remember, this was the bullseye not too long ago as we get another good gust of wind. You can feel it, you can hear it. This was the bullseye about 24 hours ago, right? All the predictions, all the models, or at least a few of the models, the European, the American model, had the storm moving this way, the eye of the storm making landfall right where I'm standing. Since that has shifted further south from here, that does not mean, though, obviously, as you can see, that we aren't especially going to get hit, especially in an area like St. Petersburg, surrounded by water, very dangerous on those barrier islands. Those islands were closed earlier today. They are allowing access just to residents who have proof and can get on those islands just to gather up materials so they can leave. And again, that is the messaging. They do not want people in areas like this, not only because of the brunt, which is happening right now and expected to happen over the next few hours, but of course of the flooding, of the disaster area that this could turn into as we continue to see solid rain, which I would say now has been about solid for the last 15 or so minutes. We have seen bands, but this rain now has settled in. Wouldn't call it a downpour. I would call the wind whipping on me, though, something that has not stopped solid for about the last 20 minutes or so. This is expected to continue for at least the next few hours, though. And as this picks up, the danger increases. Lester.
All right, Steve, unfortunately, I've lost sound, but your body language tells me you were done speaking. So let me go to NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns right now, who can tell us exactly where the hurricane eye is right now and where it appears to be heading.
All right, thank you, Lester. So now we're in the destructive portion of the forecast. As the storm moves onshore, we're no longer really forecasting where it's going to hit because it's hitting right now. The destructive, catastrophic winds have moved on to Sanibel Island and Captiva. That's located right in here, and they're almost getting into the eye now. They're almost going to start getting out of the rain squalls and going into the calm eye as we go throughout the next couple hours. As our landfall looks like it's going to be right over the top here of the Fort Myers area, Cape Coral, Captiva, northwards. The winds are gusting pretty strong here. We do have extreme wind warnings that are in effect. An extreme wind warning is only issued when we have landfalling hurricanes of extreme nature. You know, winds over 100 miles per hour. It's almost like the equivalent of a tornado warning. But this tornado is 30 miles wide. Category 4. I mean, that's the kind of destruction that we're going to see. That's just from the wind portion of this storm. And you can see where it's located here, the bright red bands. So the latest from the Hurricane Center, they said it's almost Category 5, not quite there. It doesn't really matter if it gets there or not. That's just for the record books. The destruction's almost the same from a high-end Category 4, which this is. And as we watch it moving on shore, we're going to start to watch our gauges at the coast to see how bad the storm surge is going to be. So the forecast does have it by 8 p.m. this evening, far inland. So we're looking at that eye. It's the center of the eye is when they'll say, okay, we've officially had landfall. The eye wall where the destructive winds are has already moved on shore, but now we have to wait for the center of the storm to cross over here, somewhere near Punta Gorda, somewhere near Charlotte, and then to the north of this, later tonight into tomorrow, it'll still be a tropical storm over the top of, like, you know, the Universal Disney Complex, Orlando area, heading towards Daytona Beach, New Smyrna Beach, and then it will be eventually be a tropical storm all the way through the upcoming weekend into areas up around Savannah. But that's not where the destruction is going to be. The thing that we're concerned about now is the wind that's obviously coming on shore. That's catastrophic. And the storm surge. And this really got worse when the storm increased in intensity overnight. This was 8 to 12. And because it got so much stronger, it has jumped to 12 to 18 feet. That's never happened on the west coast of Florida, especially in southwest Florida. Charlie hit in 2004. The storm surge was only 6 to 8 feet on Sanibel Island. And that could be double with this storm in many areas throughout this. It's not going to be that bad everywhere, but where the central location is, southwards, is where we're going to have the worst of it. That's where we will see that life-threatening storm surge up to the second level of homes with wave action on top of that. We have high tide coming in Fort Myers area at 6 o'clock. Port Charlotte's right around 5:30. So we're going to see the peak of the storm surge at high tide. So add another 2 to 3 feet on top of that. Here's our inundation map. We're really zooming in close here for specific neighborhoods. This is Port Charlotte. This is Punta Gorda. This is Cape Coral. This was a map we made estimating if the water got to 9 feet. So if the water got to 9 feet, it was going to go all over here. If it goes to 12 to 18, the water is going even further inland. I mean, at 9 feet, the water was almost making it 9 miles inland to Interstate 75 through Fort Myers. With a storm surge of 12 to 18 feet, almost everything in the city of Cape Coral will be underwater. I mean, the elevations in that part of Florida are so shallow. And as far as the rainfall goes, you know, that's just beginning. Obviously, the first thing is the storm surge, and as we go throughout the wind, those are the life-threatening threats. And then the rain is going to continue. We have a high risk of flash flooding for areas from Orlando all the way back up to Daytona Beach. It's the first time that Orlando has been in a high risk of flash flooding in 5 years. This is a rare event. I know Florida has that sandy soil that absorbs the water really well. But when you get 24 inches of rain possible, even sandy soil will eventually get saturated, and we'll see water in places that we've never seen before, even in central Florida. And that area of concern is the I-4 corridor northwards, heading up towards Daytona Beach and eventually up there towards Jacksonville. So, Lester, you get the idea here. You can't have a Category 4 or 5 hurricane hit without catastrophic damage. I mean, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of people potentially without a place to live when this storm is done.
And Bill, if you can revisit one more time the notion that this thing may put the brakes on and get down to a crawl, is that still as much of a worry that it's going to slow down and become a huge rain flooding event?
It's not as bad. 2 days ago, some of our computer models were actually thinking that this thing could almost like stall near the coast, maybe crawl at like 4 or 5 miles per hour. It has slowed. It's now down to 9 miles per hour, but we're not going to get that real pause or stop. It does look like it will progress through Florida as we go throughout, tonight and through tomorrow. It'll be slow moving, and slow moving storms, whether they're tropical storms or hurricanes, can be epic rainfall producers. So that's why, water kills the most people in storms, Lester. That threat right now is the storm surge. And by the way, Naples just broke their record for the highest storm surge they've ever recorded. Right now, they're right around 6 feet. Again, we were saying some areas could get up to 12 to 18 north of Naples as we go throughout the next couple hours.
Yeah, we are all keeping a very close eye on the water here. All right, Bill Cairns will be going back to you, but right now we're joined by storm chaser Ben McMillan in Charlotte Harbor, Florida. Ben, you've been doing this a long time, now bracing for this historic hurricane and that storm surge. How do you prepare for this?
Well, not very well, Lester. When you have that significant of an increase overnight, this was not expected. This was not forecasted. There was never a 5 on that Hurricane Center track throughout the week, and we are just a few miles shy of that reading. We're going to give you a live look of Charlotte Harbor here, and what it's doing right now, Lester, is it's sucking the water out of the harbor. We had 4 to 5 feet of water right in front of us yesterday at this time, and it is solid mud. The power of this storm is incredible, and your meteorologist was just talking about in Naples how that surge is starting to come on shore, setting records. We expect that surge to slowly move north and eventually impact areas like Charlotte Harbor. And Lester, I'm only 6 feet above sea level right now. We're looking at a surge forecast of 12 to 16, even 18 feet. So there will be several of me stacked on top of each other that will be underwater. Unfortunately, the city of Punta Gorda only 6 feet above sea level, as I mentioned, and we could be looking at serious water damage across the city.
So let me understand.